You're about to enter into a new world of knowledge, curiosities, and high strangeness. This is a podcast of Straight Up Strange Productions.
You're listening to Mysteries and Monsters. I'm your host, Paul Bestel. For many years, the alien contactee movement seemed to be focused on enlightening encounters, intergalactic messages of peace and love, and trips to alien worlds. Yet as the era of Adamski, Van Tassel, Lee and Martin subsided, a more detrimental and negative experience began to take over. From the Betty and Barney Hill incident to Travis Walton, Whitley Strieber and Terry Lovelace, more and more people began to discuss traumatic, terrifying, and sometimes disturbing encounters. From an incident that occurred to him as a small boy, Derrel Sims never gave up on his attempts to turn the tables on his abductors. And today we talk about his experiences, his investigations, and why they call him the Alien Hunter. But before that, as always, don't forget you can support Mysteries and Monsters by signing up at patreon.com/Mysteries and Monsters. $4 a month gets you ad-free episodes, guaranteed early releases, bonus content, competitions and more. You can also click the link in the show notes as usual. A big thank you as always to all my patrons, and I'd especially like to welcome my latest, Shane, Paul and Jennifer Mullen. Thank you, one and all. You can find Mysteries and Monsters across all social media platforms, and please subscribe to the Mysteries and Monsters channel on YouTube. You can also visit mysteriesandmonsters.com for episodes, news and merchandise. Thank you as always to Dean Bestor for his marvellous artwork. The show is produced by Brennan Storr of the Ghost Story Guys, and Mysteries and Monsters is delighted to be a part of the Straight Up Strange network. Let's return to the field of alien abductions, implants and investigations in the company of Derrel Sims. Since the modern birth of the UFO phenomenon, the early post-war years, the contactee movement promised a rich future of cooperation. Yet from the Betty and Barney Hill case, another strand began to emerge of the abduction phenomenon. As time has gone on, more people have claimed to have had scarier and more aggressive encounters. My guest this week has spent almost 4 decades investigating these cases, searching for evidence and answers, and I am delighted to finally welcome Derrel Sims to Mysteries and Monsters. Derrel, welcome.
Well, you might not have got a mystery, but you definitely got a monster here.
Oh, you do yourself down, Derrel. You do yourself down, sir.
Well, I just, it's been a while since I've been to the UK, and I'll tell you, I'm looking forward to going again this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good.
Yeah, we'll dive into that in a bit. So how many times, I know obviously I've seen you over here a few times on a few conferences and things. Have you ever sort of found yourself coming over here on investigations as well as some other work, Derrel?
I have. As a matter of fact, I have two implant cases out of the UK right now that are ready for surgery if I could get over there and could get that all arranged. So, yes, plenty of business there. A lot of good people there.
Fantastic. So, Derrel, as I was rambling on before we started the interview proper, I'm someone that has been aware of you for a very long time. I've heard you interviewed on countless shows. You're one of the first interviews I ever heard on Art Bell at the end of the 20th century, which ages us both. I think more than you, Derrel, because you certainly look a lot better than I do at your age. In regards to your work and how you've got to this, for anybody who has yet to come across your work or have seen you interviewed or anything like that, how on earth have you ended up becoming known as the Alien Hunter?
Well, that's a great question because I didn't design that myself. I was in an interview back in 1990, in the early 1990s, and a lady asked a question of me. She said, tell me about your experiences, and I did. And she said, "Oh my gosh, why, you're the alien hunter. You hunt them. You hunt those aliens." And I said, "That's what I do. You're absolutely right." So that was where the moniker came from. It was her. It wasn't me. And the next day, and a few days later, in a magazine, there was a blood red letters, on a black magazine with a huge alien head on the front of it. It said, the alien hunter, Derrel Sims. And that's where it came from.
I'm very interested in your experiences because obviously you are someone that had some very chilling encounters as a child, Derrel. And when I've read them, one of the things that's always struck me about your particular experience as a 3 or 4 year old is this whole transformation aspect of the creature that you encountered in your bedroom. So, without wishing to sort of open any old wounds or tread over well-trodden paths, Derrel, what on earth happened to you? And can you please clarify what I mean by this transformation of the being that you had encountered?
Well, my experience started when I was 4 years old. I refer to it as myself being a captive audience, because I literally was. And something remarkable happened. This was in 1952, long before there were cell phones and things like that, and monster movies, that sort of thing. That just was nonsensical to someone that's 4 years old. I didn't have a clue. And I noticed, I literally, I use the word switched on because that's what it's like. The entity is bringing me back into the room through the wall. And at that point, for some bizarre reason, I switched on, and now I'm completely conscious. And I'm looking at him like, who is that? Because I can't figure out what is he doing in my room. And I can't figure any of this out. But the fascinating thing about him, the two fascinating things, number one is how I figured out how to turn myself on and off when they switch you off and they put that large black eye next to you and say you won't remember. And then a lot of people back then especially didn't remember their events. So I would later learn how to switch myself back on, which I think was accidental until I learned how to do it. And my point is that whenever he would switch me off and give me what is called a screen memory, or in other words, a false memory, in other words, that Casper the Friendly Ghost or something like that, that was a bad dream that you had. And the screen memory he had for me that particular night was that of a clown. Now, that's fascinating because many abductees have terrifying screen memories of a clown, and they don't know why.
Yeah.
And I did. And when he changed my perception of his image into a clown, I kept shaking my little head back and forth saying, no, 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 no. And then I kept breaking out of his spell, so to speak, and I became conscious again, and I could see him for what he was, not for the clown image he was trying to make me imagine. So that was the first thing. The second thing that was fascinating and should be most interesting to your audience is that a 4-year-old child sees things differently than adults.
Yeah.
An adult looks at something like that and they might say something like, oh my, an alien from another world. I didn't. I like, what's wrong with him? He has large black eyes, little slit for a mouth, no nose for all practical purposes, no ears, skinny little guy, little taller than I was. And I'm like, where are his clothes? It's wintertime. I'm freezing in here. How can he? That's impossible. And I can't. And apparently, I was thinking this in my head, and he apparently heard what I was thinking. And I heard his voice in my head for the first time that I ever remembered that. And he said, it's awake. And he was talking about me. And I couldn't figure that out. How can I be hearing him like someone on the phone talking to me in my head? That's impossible. I mean, none of it made any sense. So as I looked at him, I looked from the eyes, which were mesmerizing, down through his skinny little neck, down through his chest, and noticed he didn't have any mammary glands. He didn't have a belly button, and he didn't have a TT. And that was extremely puzzling to me. I mean, I have a TT. Where's his? Why doesn't he have that? What's wrong with him? What's wrong with this picture? And it was absolutely stunning to me. So even at a very early age, I realized there's something wrong with this picture. And in my opinion, to wrap up the whole thing, the whole UFO phenomena, we're looking at a screen memory.
Yeah.
We're not seeing the real story.
I know you also, throughout this period, you mentioned the fact that your parents were clearly quite switched on as well, Derrel, because they clearly noticed that something wasn't right and you weren't happy going to bed. So they were looking to get you sleeping with them, and yet, even with the support and protection of your parents, the visitors were still coming for you and just taking you from between them, weren't they?
They were. My parents were. I never would explain to them what had happened. I never told. My mom found out about when she was 89 years old. And she said, "But why did you never tell us?" And I said, "Because I didn't like that look of unbelief, that Boo Radley look on your face."
Yeah.
As I'm seeing now. I said, I couldn't have dealt with that at 4 years old. Stand there and tell you the truth of my heart, and then you look at me like I'm made everything up or had a bad dream of a cloud or something. So I never told them. But then the weird thing was they put me between them, and my mom I told her about that, and she said, "I don't remember that." And I said, "Well, I do perfectly." I said, "You sleep like this," and I showed her how she slept with her arm up over her face, and Dad sleeps on his right side. She said, "Well, how do you know that?" And that's because I was sleeping between you two. I remember perfectly, because as soon as I got my eyes closed, I realized something's wrong, and I opened my eyes, and there were two of them. The guy that got me last night and one that looked just like him. And here's what's really weird. Even though they looked identical, I could tell them apart easily. I knew which one was my handler, the one that was coming for me.
Well, did this go on a lot during your early childhood, Derrel? Because often when I've spoken, because I've had the privilege of speaking with 3 or 4 people who have suffered the abduction phenomenon, and I'm sure you're aware of a couple of the cases, Calvin Parker from the famous Pascagoula incident, and Terry Lovelace.
Sure. Both one of them's an abductee of mine, and the other one is, in fact, I'll be doing a TV shoot with Terry Lovelace this next week.
Because I know I've seen in the past you've done some work in regards to Terry's case and in regards to this. So as you were developing this, was this something that continued throughout your childhood? Because I know that gets to a point where you're sort of late teens as you're about to go into college. It seems to tail away. So was this something that you were still having to deal with as a young child throughout that period then, Derrel?
It was about every year and a half, they would come back. And the best way to describe it is I had approximately 10 events over a 13-year period. My events started at age 4, ended at age 17. And my next event after these first 2, the next event, we moved to Mayhill. Well, that happened in Midland, Texas on 1005 South K Street.
Yeah.
And my next event, we moved to Mayhill, New Mexico, and I was there, and we were living in a basement of a church where my dad was a Baptist minister, and we were building a parsonage, a little house for the next to the church, and we stayed in the basement until that was finished. And I went out to this outhouse, which is a bathroom, an old style bathroom, like you might see in the old Western stories.
Yeah. And
just as I shut the door and walked out of it, there was the alien standing there looking at me, the same guy that got me every time. And the next thing I notice is I'm back at the door of the basement of the church, which I can't figure out how I got there. And I went in, and the next day, that was a Friday night. The next day, Saturday, I was out of school, and I was doing something most unusual. I was catching hundreds of grasshoppers and killing them, pulling the heads off of them, which is real unusual for me because I love animals. I rescued animals all my life. I love insects. I love everything, tarantulas, snakes, birds, everything.
Yeah.
And here I am killing hundreds of these little bugs, and these are grasshoppers. And I finally said, "Why am I doing this?" And I pulled one of the little grasshoppers next to my face and looked at him very carefully. And I realized that's the wrong shape of head. It was a praying mantis that I was after, because that was the one that got me the night before. 7 foot tall with a praying mantis face.
So it was almost as if it was some kind of trauma response that you weren't aware of.
Exactly correct. I realized it's the wrong shape of head. That's the wrong guy I'm after. So that kind of I guess realistically, and everybody talks about the alien hunting. The hunt started for me when I was a child. I mean, they came after me, and I later came after them because they finally came after my son. And you can mess with me, and I can live with it, but you come after my children, and I don't care what planet you think you're from or what dimension you think you're in. You got to come here sometime, and you may get caught by me.
Yeah. I have to say, when I've read or heard you speak about what happened with your son, it's quite chilling on two aspects of it, Derrel, for me. Firstly is, as a parent, I would imagine there was a fear, a hopelessness that was sort of pervading, that no matter what you knew or how prepared you thought you were with this situation, you still couldn't protect your son, as your parents seemed unable to protect you when you were a child. And also the fact that your son was also so switched on that he'd created some kind of booby trap which could have killed any of you if you'd have made a misstep at any point. That's
correct. He was so... some people say, well, these are just dreams that people have. Well, you're wrong. That's his experience was so real that he'd made a crossbow and set it up in his room so that anybody that opened that door the next night would have gotten an arrow shot clean through them. And anybody, if been me or anybody that opened that door, had been it. So that was quite horrifying for a boy 6 years old to do, because again, he didn't want to. He's just going to try to protect himself to the best he can. So that was pretty horrifying. But the thing that bothered me most was that it wasn't just that they came. It was one of the beings that came with them was one of the ones in my last event. And I try to explain things to people that the UFO phenomena may be a little different than you really think it is. If you shout enough information at people over and over and over, they believe that's the facts.
Yeah.
But if you're not an investigator, you probably don't know what the facts are. You only know what the stories are, not what the evidence shows. So when in my last event, when I was 17, 5 entities showed up in the room, and they didn't, it wasn't a screen memory. It wasn't like, oh, you had a terrible, terrible dream. No, they kicked the door and broke the door broke the lock clean off the door, and it fell on the floor. That's not a screen memory. And the amazing thing is my parents right next door didn't hear a thing. My dad noticed the broken door the next morning when he got up and said, "You sure are rough on these doors, boy." And I said, "Yes, sir." And he walked off, never said a word, like he was programmed not to question. But they got me that night, and the 5 entities that came that night were not the alien. They were the ones who made, hatched, cloned, or manufactured the ones we refer to as the aliens, the Greys, the reptile, the Nordic, the Bigfoot, and so on. All these are 7 models that were created, hatched, cloned, or manufactured to make us think that these are aliens from another world.
Why do you think they stopped coming at that period of your life, Derrel? Because I know it's one of those things that often, when I've heard experiencers talk or people discussing their abduction, it's very rare that it just stops as suddenly as it seemed to do so for you. Do you think that they had a pre-programmed amount of time that they wanted to spend with you, or do you think that they just got what they needed and therefore you were then left to your own devices, as it were?
Well, I have my own views of. I've got 2,000 open cases currently worldwide, and I've interviewed tens of thousands of people over 50 years. So I know quite a bit more than a lot of folks may surmise. And I think an answer to that would be, in my life, I have found probably a half a dozen people that the alien, for whatever reason, didn't like and did everything they could to interfere or destroy their life. And I met a boy one time right here in Houston, and just the sweetest, nicest person you ever want to meet. And he kept crying as a young boy. He said, why did they hate me so? And they just terrified him. And the reason he doesn't understand is that they see something in him that's dangerous to their cause. And it doesn't matter whether he gets it or not. It's important that they understand that. And he didn't know. I didn't bother to tell him. I was hoping his events would end. But there is an agenda bigger than the quote-unquote alien phenomena going on. The ones who made, hatched, cloned, or manufactured them are the ones that are in charge, not the alien. The alien is not in charge of anything. As one lady told me one time, she said, "Oh, the aliens are light years ahead of us." And I said, "How do you know that?" "Well, they just are." I said, "That's not an answer. You didn't answer my question." Mm-hmm. "How do you know that?" "Well, because they build these spaceships that are wonderful." I said, "Sweetie, many of the aliens only have 3 fingers and not an opposing thumb. How do you suppose you build anything with an opposing thumb?" She said, I said, "You don't. Somebody made this ship for them. The ship is interactive, and they fly it based on the interaction of their made, manufactured, hatched, or cloned body so that it matches the ship, and they can literally fly. Notice there's no big steering wheels in the spaceship. Mm. There's no big gear shift knobs, no steering wheel, no third, fourth, fifth. There isn't anything like that. Why is that? Because it doesn't work like anything you think."
Mm. Mm. I suppose, Derrel, as well, at that point where you'd had the incident with your son, because clearly that's the catalyst where you've thought, right, you've drawn a line in the sand, you've gone, right, I've had enough of this. You're messing with my family. It's time to turn the tables on you. As you were moving forwards, because obviously when we think about how the UFO phenomenon was perhaps in 1980 compared to where we are today, back in 1980, we'd only just sort of begun to uncover what had allegedly happened at Roswell. A lot of cases, that seems to have been the germination into the modern era where the whole UFO phenomenon spread in a more worldwide way as it had done after those sort of early years after the Second World War, when everybody had there was the big flaps of the late 40s and early 50s, Derrel. So how difficult or how easy was it to try and find like-minded people when we think back to how communication was 40 years ago, really?
Well, the UFO community back in the 60s and 70s and 80s was the biggest mess you ever saw. You've never seen so many nutcases in your entire life involved in that. And they literally were the nut fringe. And when UFO researchers and others hear statements like, "Well, you guys are the nut fringe," you don't even have a clue. The nut fringe is way back then. Sane people are involved now, and they're actually looking into this phenomenon, trying to figure it out. But at age 12, I experienced another abduction. I lived on Ohio Street in Alamogordo, New Mexico then, which is near White Sands Missile Range and Holloman Air Force Base. And I experienced a nasal implant in that particular event, and I remembered it. And my point is that in the course of all of that, I realized this has got to be happening to someone else. So I started looking and talking to people. And when I went to New Mexico State University, people started contacting me. I like fell over. I was a martial arts instructor at NMSU. And then a lady who was associate students, I would do martial art demonstrations for the university, and they loved them. We would break rocks, some of them weighing up to 22 pounds, and we'd break bricks and with a head and run over broken glass, did all kinds of fun, weird things, and showing our skills and so on. And then the lady that ran the program said, "Could you come by my office tomorrow?" I said, "Sure," and I did. And I thought, well, they want me to do another demonstration for them. And she said, she looked around and shut the door, and she said, "My husband's on the football team," which I said, "Okay." And she said, "I need to tell you something very important I've never told anybody." I said, "Okay." I'm like, "What?" And she tells me this UFO story that I mean to tell you. To this day, you probably would say she made it all up. She didn't. There's some fairly good evidence that she didn't make it up. Long story short, she played with a little girl when she was about 12 herself then, and the little girl was about 6, and the little girl would do all kinds of strange things. She'd like say, "We need to get inside. There's a storm coming." And sure enough, they get inside and the storm would come. And she said, one time I had a sleepover, and the little girl sat up in the middle of the bed, started speaking this unintelligible language. And she said, "I'm an educated woman. I know the difference between gibberish and an actual language." She was speaking in a language, and I'd never heard anything like it before. And I said, okay. And so we were playing one day, and she said, who were you talking to last night in your dream? She said, "I wasn't dreaming. I was talking to them." Them who? What are you talking about? And she described the alien. And anyway, the little girl had to go to sleep at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And after, when she waited for her to go to sleep, she went and talked to her mother and says, "Oh, she is such a wonderful little girl. I love having being around her." And she said, "Oh, she's not really ours. She's adopted." She said, "What do you mean?" She said, "We never told her." The little girl had told her, though, that she was adopted. She said, "Well, where do you think you came from?" She says, "My parents died in a plane crash with a little baby, my size, and the baby was switched out for me." And the mother at that point told the little girl, she said, "Oh, her parents died in a plane crash. She was the only survivor." That's just not going to happen in a plane crash. A little baby survived and everybody dies. Anyway, that was my first case of a hybrid case, and that was in 1967, really, 1967. That was the first case I actually had of someone telling me that. And so they started coming to me, people, and I started looking for people with implantations, things like that. And I would find one once in a great while, one in Brazil at the time. And now is a very famous case, and in fact, she's on the front of my book. And she got looks like a lifesaver in her skull here, right in her head, in the brain, and it's inside her brain. And she was one of the first people that I contacted.
When did you start to sort of specialize, Derrel, in dealing with implants? Because I suppose these days this seems to be the most prevalent body of the work that you're involved in regards to this. Because I mean, the other aspect of all this, Derrel, is that some people, when you start to talk about the implant situation, obviously, as we mentioned Terry earlier, Terry's someone who's had something discovered that he was completely unaware of, with no sort of impact, because that's often the technical dismissal of these things, Derrel, that people say, "Oh, it's an injury that you've forgotten about," or you've tripped up and you didn't realise it, or you might have brushed past something. But often these people have no wounds, there's no damage around the tissue, it's just as though something's been placed there somehow. So, as you were developing your contacts and your knowledge, at what point during that sort of period after this did you start to focus in on this to try and track down as many people as you can? Because I know the other aspect of all this is that I've heard you say you've done thousands of interviews with people who have claimed to have implants, and the vast majority don't have anything.
That is true. Implants are very rare, and I get probably half a dozen phone calls or emails a week saying, "Oh, I have an implant. I know I do." And I said, "Well, what medical evidence do you have to support that?" And almost all the cases, there's no evidence. I said, just because you were abducted or had a contact experience or think you had one doesn't mean that you have an implant. Implants are very rare. I said, now I will give you a troubling piece of news. If you've seen an alien, you've seen a UFO, especially up close and so on, you're already programmed. You don't need an implant. You're part of the program. Don't even get it. You're already there. So you don't. An implant isn't going to make your biggest qualifier, so to speak. You'll have your experiences regardless, and you're going to be tagged from now to whenever they decide to leave you alone. That's just the way it works.
So, are implants for those people who seem to be problematic then, Derrel, are the ones that don't seem to listen or take the orders that they're trying to be programmed with? Is that what the implant program seems to be about, rather than the normal abduction process?
The implants it's still ongoing, because if it were just a simple let me give you the simple version that most people think the implant phenomena is.
Yes.
They think the implant is a transponder or a device to locate you, and it isn't. Implants have nothing to do with that, nothing at all. One person told me, they said, but it is. It's a transponder. That's how they find me. I said, let me ask you a big question. How did they find you to begin with? They know who you are. They probably have already gotten someone in your family lineage already, maybe 2 or 3. If you talk to your mother, your father, your sisters, brothers, uncles, aunts, whoever, and you're a real abductee, it's likely that there's more in your family. They just don't want to talk about it. So that's number one. Number two is it's easier to describe what an implant isn't than what it is. An implant isn't a transponder. It's not used as a tracking device. They know where you're at. They don't need a transponder. The purpose of the implant, if anything, is to collect data from you, either to upload or download data for a particular reason. Normally, they could do that without an implant. So there are other reasons for the implants. The second problem with the implant is that people say, well, what does it mean? Tell me this. And well, I don't know how to tell you what it is, what it isn't. If I haven't seen your x-rays, CAT scans, or MRIs, I'd be guessing. First of all, how did they approach you? Did you see the craft? Did you approach it? Did it approach you? Did it approach your car? Did they come into your room? What happened? Did you see them out in the woods or what? Number two, did they touch you? How did they touch you? On the arm, hand, where? All those are really important answers that help me determine what's happened. Third is that it is more likely that where the implant is in your body, if it is an implant, if it is, and based on where it's located in the body, and sometimes it may have to do with meridians rather than just my shoulder, or my arm, or my neck, or something like that. So it's much more complex than people give it credit for.
I think that's often as with many things, Derrel, there's a lot of assumptions that get passed forwards as facts in this particular field, isn't there?
Well, as long as you keep shouting it long enough, somebody keeps saying it, or you keep reading it on the internet over and over and over by people who are not informed, that becomes the truth. Then somebody like me comes along. It's got a large collection, the biggest collection of alien implants on the planet, outside the United States government, I suppose, and physical evidence. I have to go back and explain away all these goofy ideas that come up on the internet about, well, I've got 4 transponders in me. Why in the world would somebody want 4 transponders in you? Well, it's MI6 is doing that. Well, why would MI6 spend the money on the likes of you? For what reason? You know, if they're going to come after somebody, why don't they come after me? I was spent 2 years in Central Intelligence Covert Operations. I kind of would be a little more valuable target, I would think. But then rather than someone saying, I was abducted by a flying saucer and I saw a bright light. Now, who wants to hear that story and spend $5 million tracking them for the next 10 years? That doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't. I mean, that's the other aspect, as you touch on there, Derrel. You've always been very open and honest about your work with the CIA, because I know often, especially in this particular field, there are always people classed as being sleepers and misinformation agents and spreading disinformation about all kinds of things. But as long as I've been aware of you, I've also been aware of your history in the CIA, and obviously I know you served in the military as well abroad. So you've always been very upfront and forward about that. Has that kind of negativity that would have surrounded that in the early days of the phenomenon and your involvement in it, has it dissipated these days, Derrel, that the body of your work and your openness and your honesty in regards to the work you do and the people you work with has kind of pushed that to one side these days, and people don't seem to be interested that much?
Well, it was a double-edged sword. When I first told people, they would ask me, why in the world are you telling us you were in the CIA? I said, because I was, and because how would you like to find that out 20 years later after we've been friends? Wouldn't you rather me tell you the truth from day one? Now, my enemies in the UFO community, and they are there, they take the opposite track. They say, you never were in the CIA. You made that all up. You're a liar. One guy was on Art Bell and challenged me one time. He said, I'll bet you I can disprove you're never in the intelligence community. I said, okay. I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. You put up $50,000 in cash. I'll put up my house, and we'll let Art Bell be the proctor. I said, and I will furnish you my DD Form 214 that shows exactly where I was and what I did. And it doesn't say CIA, but it tells you of the organization that if you dig deep enough, you'll find out they're all company. They're all CIA, every one of them. And it's the State Department. Anytime you hear somebody's name or the word State Department mentioned on a company or whatever, that's the front for the CIA in most cases.
I suppose as well, it's also allowed you an insight into people hiding in plain sight as well, Derrel, because I would imagine, as open and honest as you've been, there will always be numerous individuals who are company people who have tried to sort of integrate themselves into certain investigations or certain research teams or certain UFO groups over the years. We're all very aware of some very infamous cases down the years. Has this something, or rather, is this something that you still come across, or do you think it's not as prevalent as it once was, that, in the heady days of the 80s and 90s, paranoia did seem to run through quite a few groups?
It did, for a fact. The MUFON was infiltrated by the FBI back in the 70s and 80s. There's no question of that. They admitted it. But the fact is that it's highly likely MUFON is still infiltrated. Then I have a lot of MUFON friends. I like MUFON, like a lot of good people there. But it doesn't change the fact that people say, why do you have your case? Why don't you join a major organization? I said, I already have a major organization. I'm it. And I said, the fact is, I said, I don't have to go through a bunch of people and try to figure out who's right and who's wrong and who's spying and who's doing this and everything. I said, my information is not going to the government. It's not going to be traded, sold, or given to the government for any reason. It's these people gave me their information with the express purpose, most of them, to being private, and that's exactly the way it's going to stay. But one fun thing that was kind of interesting, there was a guy came on Art Bell program a long time ago. It says, oh, yeah, me too. I was in the CIA, too. Of course, I listened to him, and he told Art he was a CIA agent and all that, and I laughed, and I said, Art says, Derrel, you want to take that on? I said, I'd be glad to. I said, where'd you take your training? He said, Quantico. I said, we never trained there. What are you talking about? Oh, I said, you took your spy training at Quantico? Yeah. Okay. I said, it was a certain CIA training camp that we were at. Oh, I was there too. Okay. Describe some of the buildings there for me. He starts describing these really, I said, there aren't any buildings there like that. And I said, tell me the actual name of the most important building on that installation. Well, he couldn't do it. I said, the fact is they don't have any names. I said, let me tell you, let me help you out here. If you're going to lie to people, at least make the story up and be informed when you lie.
Yeah.
I said, there's no such thing as a CIA agent. I said, it's a person who comes out of the spy school and they successfully passed and done all that, and go out into the world. They're called case officers. A CIA agent is a person who is either witting or unwitting that works for the CIA, that is not an actual employee, but they're used, so to speak, by the CIA. And I'll give you a horrible example if you'd like to hear one. Everybody knows who this guy was. Anybody remember the Kennedy assassination?
Yeah.
And who was the one who shot Kennedy?
Well, that's a matter of conjecture, isn't it?
That was the CIA agent.
Yeah.
He was employed by the CIA at the time of the assassination.
Yeah.
That would scare people half to death. I'm telling you, there's more to that story than a bunch of conspiracies, I'll tell you. My point is that a an agent is someone. If I were a case officer, as an example, I was the real spy. I wanted somebody to do something for me, but I didn't want anybody to know. I'm not going to let you know you're working for the CIA. I'm just going to hire you to do something, to pass out flyers or whatever it is I want done, for whatever reason, to do my operation. But you will not even know. In most cases, you don't know you're an employee of the CIA. Those are people who are called unwitting agents. Yeah. A witting agent might be military people who are picked up and hired like SEAL team for a particular job or something that was done, or like in Fallujah, Ramadi, or some other place like that. You might be working specifically for the company in conjunction with and or may even be an agent of the CIA, because you're, number one, being paid by them, but you're not a quote-unquote spy necessarily. The case officer, the spy. Like I told the guys, if you're going to make this stuff up, at least be informed when you lie.
Sounds like somebody'd watched too many TV movies, Derrel.
Too much James Bond.
Oh, yes. Well, that's often the case with situations like this, when people, they have this kind of small town mentality, Derrel, where they can spin these tall tales to people down the bar, and occasionally they might try and phone in a radio show or something, spinning the same old stories. But until they bump into somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, that's when it all falls apart for them. And that often is the case with these kind of people, because they don't know the real details. They just know the general presumptions of how these things work.
Well, Paul, I'd like to give you one last illustration. There was an attorney who was handling a legal case for me for a TV show. And he called me up on the phone after we had decided to use him. He's a big attorney out of Hollywood, in that area. And anyway, he said, I know you. And I said, and I had the phone on so my wife could listen to the conversation. And I said, I disagree with you. I said, I don't know you at all, sir. You come highly recommended, but I don't know you. He said, no. He said, I know you. He said, I heard you on Art Bell a long time ago. I said, what are you talking about? He said, my father used to listen to Art Bell all the time. And I said, okay. He said, he actually was in the CIA. And he said, listen to this guy. He said, Dad, those guys are all crazy. He said, listen to him carefully. He said, he is actually real. He said, what are you talking about? He said, well, I was at the CIA. His dad was a spy. He was a case officer. And he says, everybody knew him at that spy camp. Everybody. Now, he didn't know me, but I knew him. And he said, everybody knew him. He was a weapons instructor and a martial arts instructor. He said, you're talking to the real deal. He's 100%. And I said, well, that comes pretty interesting from a guy who was in the company when I was there at the same time. He said, but everybody knew you. He said, they remember you well.
So your reputation preceded you regardless, Derrel.
Well, nobody's perfect. Don't worry about it.
I'm very interested, because obviously the other aspect of all this is that as you've built this team, and you had a team sort of in the 90s that were working alongside you and investigating cases, how easy was it to get medical practitioners involved? Because I know I've heard you interviewed with Dr. Roger Lear, who was he a podiatrician, I believe, at that time? He specialised in foot removal issues, I believe. Derrel, was it something that you found difficult to get people to buy into, or is this one of those situations where there are lots of very open-minded people, they just don't like talking about it in public?
All of the above, but the medical people in particular back in those days were vilified by we had a group of people that were debunkers. They used to travel around all the time, and they would, anybody that you had professional working with you or doctors, they would publish their name on the internet, vilify them, make them look like nutcases, try to get them to lose their job. They did this stuff all the time, try to get them canceled, lose their jobs, and so on, so that no one would work with you anymore. And how I met Roger Lear was, I was out in California, and a lady, a wonderful lady, introduced me. She was his best friend, and she said, I'd like to meet Dr. Lear, he's a podiatrist, and I said, okay. And he looked at me, and we talked a little bit, and he said, well, that's just the biggest bunch of junk I ever heard. I don't believe a word of it. And I said, okay. I said, would you like to look at the x-rays? And he said, what x-rays? And I showed him some x-rays of these 3 objects in this lady's foot. He says, those look like surgical clips from an osteotomy. And I said, that's what I thought, until I found out that she had no previous history of surgery. He got real quiet and said, weird. And I said, if I could bring him out here, would you do the surgery on the foot for this lady? And he said, yeah. And anyway, that's how I was his mentor, and that's how he learned the business, so to speak. Then later we split up several years later. Some of the implants started disappearing, and I'm a ex-cop, ex-CIA. Nothing disappears on not on my watch. So when that happened, I asked him if he would step down, and he graciously did. So we split up. He went his way, and I went mine. But the next doctor came along with a cardiovascular surgeon who was real high up in the military, by the way. And he did a wonderful surgery for us. I brought a bunch of people on from MUFON to watch it in Santa Monica. And Jolene Ray Harrington, my media consultant, was there present with some other board members and others of MUFON, and they were just fascinated. I love the way the cardiovascular surgeon handled a beautiful, incredible office in Santa Monica. Very ritzy. He said, there are only 2 professional people in this room, and I'm one of them. Everybody else sitting out in the room, they're all TV people and everything. And he said, whatever Mr. Sims instructs you to do or what I instruct you to do, that's it. If you have any problem with that, there's the door. And that's the way it went down. I mean, I really like him. Very, very militaristic, very straight-laced, and very, very super professional. But at that surgery, we had a brain surgeon and also this cardiovascular surgeon, and he was looking at the x-rays back there with me in his separate room. He said, what do you think? And I said, I think it's not an alien implant, but it had you could stick a magnet to the guy's leg and all that. I mean, it's really, to a UFO people wear UFO hats. They do. A UFO hat gets fooled all the time. You bring anybody out, tell the biggest whopper there ever was, make it up, and half the people out there will buy into it, and even though he's making it up. So anyway, he said, what do you think it is? And I said, I think he's a mechanic. He's a good man. He's got 7 scoop marks up his leg. I know that he's a real abductee, but that's not an alien implant. And I said, I think he crawls around on the ground, works on cars or whatever. That's a shard of metal from the ground. It's got stuck in his leg. He didn't know it, and that's the alien implant. That's what he thinks it is, because he's had contact with an alien. That must be it. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go ahead and remove the object and remove one of the scoop marks as well, because I want to check the biology on it. And I said, he said, well, what do you want to move the implant for? I said, if you don't, he's going to think it's a big conspiracy. Yeah. He'll say, well, it's conspiracy. They wouldn't do it. So we did it. And I sent it off, had it studied in Scotland, of all places, way out of the country. No one knew anything except the engineer and doing the study and so on. And he described it in great detail. And I said, why don't you just translate it so English people can understand it? He said, it's just a shard of metal like you might find in the junkyard. I said, thank you. Now, the difference between that and the first implants were removed from the lady's foot were different as night and day. Those turned out to be metals that turned out to be rare metals from a meteorite, the Wittgenstein or the Yautshung meteorite in outer space. So I think it was extraterrestrial for sure. And it just blew people away left and right. Even at the laboratories, they were stunned.
Of all the successful removals of implants that you've come across, Derrel, how many of them have got this sort of membrane protection? Because I've heard you talk about this before as well, that there seems to be this kind of protective sheath around a lot of them. Is that something you're still uncovering, or is this something that happens with all the successful implants that you're able to track down and remove, or is it not as prevalent in regards to what you have to deal with when you have them removed?
Paul, you ask great questions, and that's a particularly interesting and good question, because the implant membrane that we find around so many of these are there for a particular reason. And it's not around all of the implants we find. And like we have one case that it was around Area 51 is a good. They were camping there one time, and a guy goes off. A lady friend of his, they were not boyfriend girlfriend, they were just friends. He goes off in the middle of the night, leaves his tent. He comes back stumbling, and she says, "Where have you been?" "I don't know." "Why are you limping?" "I don't know." "What happened to your leg?" "I don't know." He's had an abduction, doesn't he have a clue? He bought into the "you won't remember" thing. So he goes to the doctor. His doctor x-rays it and says, "No, that's weird." He says, "You've got 4 tic-tac size objects lined up in your tendon of your knee." He said, "That's impossible." That's what I like to hear. The second thing, he sent him to a specialist. The specialist surgically removed the 4 tic-tac size objects and said, "Those objects are tic-tac size lined up in your knee in the tendon. It's impossible." And on top of that, he said they appear to be a plastic-like material. They're not calcifications or anything that's natural whatsoever. I don't know what they are. I don't want to know what they are, and don't ever come back here again. See, that you have to understand that doctors who discover things that shouldn't be in people, what if it turns out to be alien? Or even the military, but it's a rare something that was, see what you getting here? Yeah. How'd you like to be the doctor to get a visit from the national intelligence community? How'd you like it to be on their watch list for the next 10 years?
Yeah.
Nobody wants that kind of trouble.
No.
Nobody wants it. So getting doctors originally was very hard to do. Now we've got a number of them. In fact, for your audience, I think they'll like this. When I'm at Manchester this year, I'll be describing it in detail. Some of our implants that were discovered in some of our first surgeries have been reviewed by the Royal Society of Chemical Engineers. How about that?
Are they a variety of substances then, Derrel, as you refer to some of them being sort of off-worldly elements in regards to only being found in meteors, which is often something that takes the normal excuses, as I said earlier, about them being bits of shrapnel or just detritus that people have picked up over the years through their normal working lives, that separates them from run-of-the-mill elements and metals?
The problem with the implant phenomena is the following. Number one, people don't know what alien implants really are. They really don't have a clue. Just because I've got some rare metals from outer space ended up in somebody hidden in a biological cocoon that one Nobel laureate said, "Mr. Sims, you may have a Nobel laureate. Fine now. If you can replicate what that biological cocoon does in a human body," he said, "organ donor rejection would be non-existent." And I laughed and I said, "Yeah, what laboratory do you think that I could send that to and that it would come back, I would get a positive result on it?" He laughed and said, "Not one." I said, "I was born at night, but it wasn't last night, and I was born in Texas." I said, "That's never going to happen." I said, "I've already been through that part of society in the so-called science world. I get that. That's not going to happen." So the point is that, to your question, excellent question, these things, I mentioned what location they were in the body, how you were approached, how it was installed, what kind of entity was involved. All of that's important. And then on top of that, what if your implant turns out to be a plastic-like material, not a rare metal from a meteorite? Or what if it turns out to be, are you ready for this? One implant was removed at my home out of my daughter-in-law's ear by a MIB and by another alien entity called a human advisor. And it was apparently, you ready for this? Imagine it as a thick hair, very thick, about 4 inches long and alive. So how do you classify those 3 kinds of implants? You see the problem I have?
Yeah.
So people don't know what an alien implant, they don't even know what an alien is. They don't. Well, it's a little bug-eyed guy. No, the little guy, he's only got an IQ of 80. That's a moron. That's why you can't get your clothes on right half the time. You wake up, your clothes on inside out or backwards, or wake up out in the yard out there and can't figure out how you got outside when the tumbler's on your lock, your door, a double tumbler takes the key to get in and a key to get out. And your keys are inside your house. How does that happen? It isn't sleepwalking. So there are just a lot of remarkable things that come up in this stuff. You're asking some really good questions, Paul.
Well, thank you very much. Well, when you have a guest as venerated as yourself, Derrel, I've got to be on my A game, sir.
Well, venerated is not. I think archaic would be ancient. When they made dirt the first time, like the dirt behind me here in this picture, it was the wrong color. I told them, hey, that's not going to work. That's why we got dirt like that now.
So, would you say there are varieties of implants? As you say there, you've referred to the one that was in your daughter-in-law's. So some of them are biological entities as well as these membrane encased metals.
Thank you. That would be correct. The fact is, when I did a presentation in 1994, before we ever did any implant surgeries whatsoever, a year before anything like that had ever happened, I did a presentation for 250 doctors at John Muir Medical Hospital at $1 million facility, and 250 doctors, surgeons, and medical personnel were there. It's a continuing education program where I was paid to teach the continuing education class on medical complications of alleged human alien contact, implants. Needless to say, that was a pasty-faced, wide-eyed bunch of people you ever saw in your life sitting in that room. When I finished, 3 doctors came on board to help us. They were that impressed.
Have you ever had someone come forward, Derrel, who's got an implant, who doesn't want it removing?
Yes. We have people who do not want their implant removed. Now, I've already removed, like I said, about 27 objects from people so far. That's true. In many cases, I've got several people right now, I'm asking them to leave the objects in. They want them out. And I'm asking them, please leave them in, because I'm hoping that I can get funding. I want to take all my implants in my large box to a laboratory in probably York University in Canada, under the care of Dr. Nick Balakis. He's a remarkably good man. And I would love them to take the implants that are out and basically ping them, so to speak. See if they will if anything still works in them. Number one. And 2, in the other room have abductees who've had their implants removed and abductees who have not had their implants removed. See if anything that's happening in the other room affects them or affects their implant in them. That's number 2. And 3 is I like to do independent testing on both groups. And I'd love for them to meet each other and to discuss things about their implants and their life and so on and so on. There's a lot of things that people, well, like I said, I'm telling you some things here on this program I've never told anybody. I gave you 3 examples of implants. The metallic ones that were from outer space, the plastic ones, we don't know what in the world they are because it costs a fortune to get this stuff studied, and I'm the one that pays for it out of my pocket. And so some of it just doesn't get the full study that it deserves. And 3, I told you about a biological one out of my daughter-in-law's ear. Now I'm going to tell you about one that most people, in fact, MUFON doctors years ago said they didn't believe a lot of the women who claimed these alleged alien pregnancies. And so I went and did a MUFON conference for a friend of mine up in the northern part of the country. He said, I've got a bunch of MUFON investigators here. I want you to do a MUFON presentation just for them. And I said, what do you want them to know or not know? And he said, all of it. Tell them everything. I said, there's going to be some egg on people's faces here. And he said, tell them. So I did implant presentation. Everybody was very impressed until I got to the last implant. I said, recently, MUFON, as I understand it, made a statement by some of their doctors that these women who are claiming these alleged alien pregnancies, these are either false pregnancies or they're miscarriages, or they got pregnant because they shouldn't have. They were sleeping with somebody, blah, blah, blah. I said, and basically that women don't know their bodies. I said, I respectfully disagree with that premise. And I said, I've got several cases of artificial implantation by the alien. I said, but none of that is important because, quote unquote, I can't prove that. And evidence is everything to me. I said, so, however, I will show you the following. This is one case I have out of, and I told them where it was from. And she claims she had been artificially inseminated. How she found that out was, number one, she didn't have a boyfriend. And number two, she wasn't raped. And number three, she went to an abortion clinic after she got pregnant, and she wanted to have it removed. Then as it got bigger and bigger, she got thinking, later got sonograms done, and to her shock and amazement, she decided she wanted to keep the baby. Well, she went down to the abortion clinic that day, and they said, come on in. And she said, I've decided to keep the baby. And she told this wild story, which I had a real problem with. I did. And basically that they grabbed her and put her on the table, gave her some gas or whatever, and took the baby anyway. I said, now that's one of those CIA X-Files type stories that I don't put much credence in that sort of thing, except for the fact that after she got better, oh, by the way, she later, she went home, and the weird thing about it, she went back to the brick building where the abortion clinic was. And there was no one there. Everything had been moved. It was like it was designed for her. So the reason I even bought into I told my buddy who was an investigator, he gave me the case. I said, here's the problems I have with it. And he said, I sympathize with you totally. He said, I think this might help you. And I said, okay. And I showed these people what he just told me. She went down, they forgot to go get the sonograms, but she did. She gave the sonograms to me. I came to the UK investigating another case and doing some presentations there years ago, and I went to the best fetal hospital in London and talked to a doctor, and I said, I'm a private investigator out of the state of Texas. This is not a case that I'm working on. This is just a fascinating thing, and I need some medical opinion. She said, sure. She said, may I bring a consult in? I said, please do. She brings in another top doctor. I just tossed the sonograms across the table, and I said, what do you think of all that? What does that mean? And she rearranged the sonogram. She said, wait a minute, that's not right. I said, what is it that's not right, doctor? She says, whoever took these sonograms was not interested in the fetal development whatsoever of the fetus. I said, based on your observation, can you tell me what they might have been interested in? That was a great question. She said, oh, my God, what a strange little head. Large pointed chin, large bulbous head. I've never seen anything like it. Now, you have to understand, fetal hospital doctors have seen every deformed baby in the universe. They've seen them all. She had never seen anything like this because it's an alien head inside the woman's body. And so I showed all those MUFON investigators, and at that meeting, I showed them the sonogram. I said, here it is inside the lady. I don't think she's imagining this. Nobody said one word.
Do you think, as is often the case, I've often found this aspect of ufology strange, but not surprising, if that makes sense, Derrel, that there are certain aspects that when we talk about fantastical events and encounters and witnesses and people seeing crafts of all shapes and sizes and colours behaving in strange ways, that when certain people come forwards with certain aspects of this particular field, such as what we're talking about now, and over the years, the work that people like John Mack and Bud Hopkins and Dr. David Jacobs have followed as well, and some of the things that Whitley Strieber's covered as well, lots of people in ufology simply don't give it the time of day. And I'm often surprised that there seems to be a line in whatever type of phenomenon people are interested in, Derrel. There seems to be a line that they will not cross. And when they get cases, when we're dealing with subjects like we're talking now, they simply ignore it, or they just don't talk about anything and just walk away from it.
I'll give you a good example of that in the UFO phenomena. Everybody's talking about giants and things like that, and we're doing this research, we're doing that, and so on and so on and so on. And I was telling, I did a presentation for a group of scientists in several countries on a Zoom meeting. And I was awarded a Bachelor of Science degree for my presentation by a cardiovascular surgeon he's got several degrees, 2 PhDs and an MD and so on and so on. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I told him I would be honored if he would join me in an expedition in the near future. I said, I'm trying to put the money together for it. I said, but I'm going to need you. I'm going to need a paleontologist, and I'm going to need a biologist, myself, and a film crew. He said, why? I said, because after all these years, and I've been looking everywhere, especially in Israel, to find a giant. I've been to Israel before, to Beth Shemesh, the valley where David fought Goliath and all that. And said, I finally found the bones of a giant. Finally. And he said, oh, you mean something like, 7 or 8 feet tall? I said, no, over 3 meters. 7 meters. I'm talking like something out of the Bible, where the Israelites came out of the land of Canaan. And they said, we were like grasshoppers in their sight. There were giants over there. We ain't going over there. And I said, like that. I said, now I want to do the DNA work on that and see what we can do with it. And I'm going to need your expertise and your medical skills to assist me in that. He said, I would be honored to go. I said, I'll let you know if we can get the money. It's going to be a big one. There are people that wouldn't touch that with a 20-foot cattle prod. Yes. They wouldn't do it.
No.
Because, well, it attacks everything we believe in. Okay. If, most people out there are evolutionists. I'm not one of them, but if you are, how do you explain a 20-foot tall giant? Well, it just doesn't fit. Well, they evolved. No, he didn't. That thing was hatched, cloned, made, or manufactured. And the biblical version and even other ancient writings have pretty good illustrations of what may have occurred back then, called fallen angels or whatever, interbreeding with mankind or whatever. My point is, you can argue that yay or nay, whatever you want to buy into it. My point is, we've got the bones. It's academic at this point. Doesn't matter whether you believe it exists or not. It's too late. We already got him. It's too late. It's real. So a lot of people don't want to be involved with it. They don't.
I suppose that begs the question as well, Derrel. Where did they go? What happened? Why did they stop appearing?
Well, according to the biblical version of it, if you buy into that, and I do, they were killed off by the races of people eventually. And among the American Indians, I'm Native American, Irish, Celtic myself, and 45% of abductees taken in these events are Native American, Irish, or Celtic, Scottish, so on. They are 45% of you, I guarantee it, including the Turks. They said, well, your stuff's great, but we're not Native American. Yes, you are. I said, no, I don't care what you say. You are. They did DNA testing on the Turks and found out they're related to northern tribes of Native American Indians, period. That's I could tell you story after story. I said, your people a long time ago lived in teepees, just like the Plains Indians did. I said, you don't know, you don't remember. It doesn't matter. I know. That's what's important. So the bottom line is that these giants were, American Indian history is a good example. There are a number of tribe Paiutes and others who actually fought the giants. There's a story of I really love this. I love it when white people try to tell you Native American history, like they really know it.
Yeah.
A good example. There's an incredible area in the northern New Mexico area, and on Navajo lands out there. And it's really hilarious. There are these huge cliff dwellings, and their story they tell. Well, the natives left here because they were out of food. They were running out of food. They didn't have any food left, and so they left this place and just wandered off somewhere. Nobody knows where, but they just disappeared. When you talk to the few Native Americans that actually do know and actually remember the traditional history of what went on, you get a totally different story. As one of them said, you can go up in some of those caves to this point, right up there in the caves, and still see food inside containers. If we didn't have any food, why did we leave? He said, we did leave. The problem was giants came. And they went after the children first because they're easier to catch, and they're cannibals. That bears out what the scriptures say, what the other ancient text says, in Sumerian and other documents, bears out the fact they were cannibals. And American Indians finally killed them out. They literally did.
Yeah. So is this one of the, as with anything with this, Derrel, there seems to be a many-faceted issue that covers all kinds of aspects, and it seems to be one of those things that when you start to open things up and talk about certain aspects of it, as I was saying to you before the original point, people just throw their hands up and go, no, that's too far out. That's too much for me, which I find odd when we're talking about supposed intergalactic travel, that people go, oh no, I'm not having that. That's too far fetched.
Well, we have to be open-minded enough to be able to look at the phenomena. The problem is most of the people that are listening to this stuff have got UFO hats on. UFO hats have been fooled before. They have. They really have. I have a UFO hat, but I one day realized that's not going to be sufficient. As a former police officer, I have to have a cop hat.
Yeah.
Cop hats are not, people don't like, usually when I question them, they don't like it because I don't believe in anything you say. I want to know what you can prove.
Yeah.
And so your opinion doesn't mean anything to me when that cop hat gets on. I have an intelligence hat, and it does things that are far beyond what the cop does.
Yeah.
It knows how to profile the alien. So he'll get information about the alien you won't even get to read about. Then I've got 7 different hats is my point. There's a medical hat, a science hat, a Native American hat, a spiritual hat. All of those look at any phenomena I'm looking at, giants, aliens, whatever, at the same time. Those hats don't always agree with each other. But the important thing is they give me 7 viewpoints that I didn't have before.
Yeah.
That's what makes my work, in my opinion, worthwhile.
Well, I know, obviously, when you do presentations, you're a regular guest on panels and exhibitions and conferences around the world, Derrel, and as you touched on earlier, you're returning to the UK later this year, but I know you've got one coming up shortly, which is EncounterQuest, which is in North Carolina, I believe, coming up very soon.
It is. It's in North Carolina. The best way to I'll be doing a workshop there the night before, one on alien evidence testing and implant testing. If you think you've got one or want to learn about it, that's the place to do it. And the second workshop I'll do that night is the right way. I'll actually do handwriting analysis and tell you a lot about yourself. And if you're an abductee or a contactee, you'll be able to see literally very quickly why I know you are just by looking at the drawings that we do and handwriting and so on. The wonderful thing about this is that this is EncounterQuest. It's a wonderful conference. It's got Bigfoot, aliens, and cryptids. It's in Hamlet, North Carolina. All you got to do is go to EncounterQuest.com, and I guarantee you'll get everything from Kim, and they know how to take care of you.
I suppose, Derrel, over the years, conferences are a great way to meet people that are either too afraid to reach out through normal channels, or they're the kind of people that wait until you've done your presentation and hang around by the door to get your attention and have a chat. Is that something that still goes on? Because, as I said, you're a regular guest all over North America at these events, as well as abroad. So is this still something that people come forward sort of sheepishly to, even though people might find that strange that if you're at a conference discussing these subjects, people are still quite reticent about coming out in public, as it were.
Again, your question is brilliant because it's a true statement and because that's what people do. People sometimes will watch me 2, 3, or 4 times at conferences, and they watch everything about me, and they'll come up and say, I've been watching you for years. I trust you now.
Yeah.
I just don't, they've been either burned or seen people burned or whatever, exploited in the UFO community, and they don't like it. One last illustration. A man was in a conference. This was Denver, Colorado. I'll never forget it. And I was answering a bunch of questions to these different people. And then finally they all left. And he stood there and I said, do you have a question for me? He said, I do. He said, I think all this stuff is a bunch of, he did not use kind terms to describe it.
Yes.
And I said, okay, that's all right. I said, everybody's entitled to opinion. Doesn't matter to me. And he said, I'm a sight hunter. I said, I know exactly what you do. And he said, I was hunting one day and I saw something on the edge of the hill. And as I did, I pulled my gun up and I sighted it in, instantly saw what it was. He shot it. He said, at that point, after I heard the bullet hit it in the chest and then it disappeared. He said, Mr. Sims, I'm not into aliens and all this stuff. I don't believe in all that. I don't care. But whatever it was, I shot it. And I said, what did you shoot? He said, it was about a 7-foot tall praying mantis. He said, no, that can't exist, doesn't exist, and I don't believe in any of it. But I shot it. What in the world have I just done? And I said, it's highly likely that the praying mantis was coming back from or going toward a hunter's camp, picking up a hunter for an abduction. The UFO couldn't see you because you're on the other side of the hill down below the site. But it's monitoring him. And when you shot it, they beamed him aboard immediately. And he said, I don't, like I said, I don't believe in any of this, but I shot it. I know I did. I know what I shot it. I just don't know what it was. As you shot a praying mantis, probably in the performance of its duties called abduction. That's a good shooting, by the way. Like to got him myself at in third grade, but I didn't.
Oh, I mean, it is fascinating, Derrel, and it's obviously something that's continuing. Would you say in this modern era, people are more open to this subject now, and people seem to be more comfortable, and you find out that more people are getting in touch with you in regards to coming forward with their experiences? They
are more comfortable, and especially when I've been around for, like I said, I'm older than dirt. So, I mean, you go back to archaeological records and probably find my bones back there with some other dinosaurs. The fact is, I've been at this for a long time, and like some people say, well, my opinion, I said, opinions don't mean anything to me, sir. My opinion doesn't mean anything. What I can prove or what I can show evidence of means everything. The rest of it is just a story. Yep. And that's just where I'm at. That's why I have 7 hats to review cases. Absolutely. Derrel, it's been fabulous to finally speak to you after all this time since I've been doing the show. Where can everybody keep up to date with your work and follow you online and get hold of a copy of the books that you've released so far, sir? Okay, you can go to alienhunter.com, and it's I'm not a marketer. I wrote 2 books only because people screamed at me because you haven't written any books in all these years, and they're not really books for entertainment. They're books to show you how to find evidence. If you follow the instructions in them, you will find evidence. You will. And because it's what I did, and you will too. So the books is alienhunter.com, thealienhunter.com, and you can also locate me on there if you want. Click on the Alien Hunter at the bottom, and it will email me automatically. I answer all my emails, even the goofy ones. So I'll answer any questions you got if I can. Well, brilliant. Derrel, it's been a real pleasure to finally speak to you. I hope I get the chance to speak to you again in future.
the very best of luck with your upcoming conferences, and you take care, and you never know, I might bump into you in Manchester later this year.
Oh, I'd love to meet you there. Good to be on your program again. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. Take care, Derrel.
Okay.